Hello! Welcome to Super Tech, where we talk about science. On this series, we are going to discuss pandemics. Currently, the world is going through a global pandemic due to the novel coronavirus. It has impacted society from the macro to the individual level. But have you ever wondered what was it like to experience a pandemic in the past? How did people deal with this? Today, we are going to take a trip back a few centuries and into ancient Rome. Back then, science wasn't really advanced. People lacked knowledge, and the truth about diseases were not understood. They instead turned to different ideas which often were on the supernatural side of things. Now, how did these practices turn out in the midst of a pandemic? Today, we are going to talk about the Antonine Plague. The Antonine Plague, sometimes referred to as the Plague of Galen, erupted in 165 CE at the height of Roman power. Just like today, research is needed to identify the origin of a virus, and this can't be truer for the past, given the state of science at that time. With this said, the disease is said to have originated near East, which is most likely in Eastern Han China. It then made its way to the Silk Road by trading ships headed for Rome. The Roman military came into contact with the disease, which then led to its first case during the siege of Seleucia. Given their practices before, this plague was given a supernatural origin. Two different legends arose discussing the exact origins of how the plague was released into the human population. In the first story, the Roman general and later co-emperor Lucius Verus opened a closed tomb in Seleucia during the subsequent sacking of the city, thus releasing the disease. The tale suggests that the epidemic was a punishment as the Romans violated an oath to the gods not to pillage the city. In the second story, a Roman soldier opened a golden casket in the temple of Apollo in Babylon, allowing the plague to escape. The disease quickly spread and packed military camps, nearby merchants, and camp followers. It spread even more when unknowingly deceased merchants arrived in different cities bearing news of the pandemic. Seems familiar? That sounds pretty asymptomatic. This plague lasted for over 15 years with many waves. Details about how the spread was like can be found in the writings of Dr. Galen. According to him, symptoms of the disease included fever, diarrhea, vomiting, swollen throat, and coughing. Skin eruptions or rashes appeared over the entire body, distinguished by red and black papules. These clues have led modern scientists to believe that this was smallpox or measles. So, how did people deal with this? With this seemingly unknown disease spreading across the cities, they panicked, and that meant literally running away. Those with apparent symptoms of the plague were quickly shunned. Considering the lack of knowledge in science once again, these Romans clung to anything they thought could help. This made them easy prey for con artists, a person who cheats or tricks others by persuading them to believe something that is not true. An example of this is Alexander, cult of Glygon, who apparently received prophecies from a snake. He would recite these through poetry, like prayer against the plague. One of his famous lines was, "Unshorn Phoebus, keep away the cloud of plague." People would then put these signs on their doorways as they believed that this would keep them safe. However, as ironic as it sounds, this worked the opposite way. Those who put it in their doorways were often the first to be stricken by the plague. Obviously, this was pretty unpleasant, but did a smallpox outbreak really have that big of an impact on the Roman Empire? Actually, yes, it did. The Roman historian Dio Cassius estimated 2,000 deaths per day in Rome at the height of the outbreak. In the second outbreak, the estimate of the rate of death was much higher, upwards of 5,000 per day. It is most probable that the extreme death toll was due to this disease exposure being new to people living around the Mediterranean. Just like today, this pandemic also had a major impact on their economy. Brick-making businesses collapsed. Land prices fell dramatically in places like Rome and Egypt, while wheat prices nearly doubled. Ancient governments had limited economic control. There were occasional attempts at controlling the economy with coinage and price limits, but most of these failed. Fewer craftsmen meant fewer things being made, which stymied local economies. The shortage of workforce also led to higher wages for those who survived the epidemic, and the lack of businessmen, merchants, traders, and financiers caused profound interruptions in domestic and international trade. Those in power, however, did take some steps that helped alleviate the problem. Augustus set a precedent 150 years before the plague by using the imperial treasury as an insurance to soften the blows of disaster. For the plague, this meant that the government cleared the bodies and paid for funeral ceremonies. They also hired men, since oftentimes the usual corpse collectors had already died from the disease. Now, let's go back to present time. As of now, we are actually going through a pandemic. However, science and technology has drastically improved since then. Active measures that are common today are quarantines, work stoppages, disease screening, and emergency supplies. Many people also observe social distancing and practice proper hygiene. One of the main problems back then was that they lacked the right knowledge about the disease. Fortunately today, we have lots of information about smallpox, and a vaccine has even been created. Even if there is a resurgence though, researchers are quick enough to act given the modern technology that we have. Just like today, scientists have been working on RNA vaccines, which could be the cure for COVID-19. But that is a topic for another episode. Thank you for watching. Always practice proper hygiene and stay safe.